It is.
I don't know, one of the saddest realizations I recently had was that as a liberal woman, it is really hard to find a man who is willing to play the more traditional masculine role in the relationship in today's day and age, who is not a conservative. A man who wants to pay on the first date, who wants to open your door, who has that want and desire to take care of you and to provide, who is not a conservative. And obviously, as a liberal woman, I do want to be respected for my independence. And I do want to have my own autonomy in the relationship and not be confined or conform to the traditional female homemaker, childbearing role. And most of the men that I've dated who do have that more natural provider masculinity about them are normally conservative. So I don't really know what to do because I don't want to compromise my morals and values just to find a man. But am I asking to have my cake and eat it too?
Like, you know what?
Kinda.
You don't have a problem with. You don't have a problem with the idea that if you date someone of a different political party than you, you're compromising your morals and values. That's crazy to me. Like, I don't. If you're fine, dude, who gives a shit? You're hot.
Like,
who cares?
who's going to hold you accountable?
Who's going to hold you accountable?
You.
What do you think about this? Have you had this issue where dating a man, you're a liberal who dates liberal men?
For the most part, I've had one conservative partner, and he was actually like the opposite. He was like the cheapest man I've ever been
Oh,
with.
okay.
And he was like one of those like people who are like brainwashed that he's like about to be a billionaire because of crypto. And he would always be like, "Oh my God, Trump protects my taxes." I'm like, "Oh my God, like God forbid they take your Dogecoin. That's worth $40." But no, I'm politically liberal, and that's like I keep hearing a lot of people like, "Oh, I want to raise kids. I want to be a wife." I share that mentality like stronger than anyone I know.
Yeah.
But I don't think, even feminism, I don't think we're trying, like feminists say you have to do this or you're not a feminist. I think it gives people the freedom to choose who they are, what lifestyle fits them.
I think certain types of feminists, you're correct. I think there's a type of egalitarian feminist, which is like if men can have sex with a lot of women, then women can have a lot of sex with a lot of men. And there's a separate type of feminist that is basically all men are potential rapists. That's a separate type of feminism.
Everything has extremists.
All the ills on planet Earth have to do with masculinity and testosterone. That is a separate type of feminism that exists. Hey, could you two move as close up this way as you can? Move as far to your left as you can. No, not you, Jolie. You're actually in the right spot. You're in the right spot. Yeah, good. Get you a little closer on camera.
You're in shot.
Let's get cozy. All right, cool.
Now, I was going to say, this intrigued me because I see this happen all the time. And I mean, you just confirmed it for me too, is that I think that there's sort of this natural, innate kind of evolved firmware that men and women, but in this case, we're talking about women, have sort of as part of their operating system, our starting package, if you will, for like our own psychology. So it's like for women, they want a guy who's more dominant. They want a guy who's more conventionally masculine. They want a guy who has a capacity for violence, who can also, what is it? I think it was Justin Waller said the capacity to slit throats and change a diaper.
Yeah, so hold a baby in one arm while killing somebody with the other one.
Exactly. And I think that what's funny to me is like, then there is sort of the software, which is we're sort of convinced that feminism is, anyway, I think feminism is more like a programming. It's more like a conditioning. It's more like software. And what happens is then you get into, especially as women age, they get into this state where the software kind of conflicts with the firmware. And so when it's like, I really want a guy, like she's just saying, I really want a guy who's more conventionally masculine. I need a guy who's more dominant, but those guys tend to be conservative, right? Well, that's the programming, right? That's the software, as opposed to what the actual firmware would be is men want to be men and women want to be women. And the only thing that kind of comes in between them is the fact that we have these expectations that are sort of embedded in our brains throughout the better half of our lifetime, that this is what we ought to be expecting. We ought to expect 50-50, and it ought to be egalitarian, and it ought to be an equal partnership and everything else. So the problem is that our evolutionary firmware doesn't agree with that. And so that's why you have this cognitive dissonance for this woman who's in the car talking about, I really want a guy who's nice and conservative and very, dominant and traditionally conventionally masculine, but that goes against my religion, because she's using basically my morals and my virtues and using religious sort of terminology to describe what she's feeling. And she's almost like saying, like, I feel like I'm betraying my God, or I'm betraying my religion by wanting this guy. And if I want this guy, then what are my other feminist believing friends going to say about me? That sound accurate?
I mean, there's definitely some people who share that notion.
Mhm.
I don't.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So
Like,
are you looking for a guy who's like more conventionally masculine?
Oh, 1,000%.
Right.
Like
Okay.
I do. But I mean, my theory is I think everyone should have the freedom to be who they are. And I think we should have a world that's set up. Like me personally, I'm fully feminine.
Mhm.
So I know I can only be compatible with a fully masculine partner. But I feel like for a household to work, I think there just needs to be an equal balance.
Let's see.
So I think it works better when people can express that in a free way. Like if somebody can be who they are, they can find their equal partner. And I think that actually builds more strong nuclear families.
Hmm.
I would personally never agree with it, but I know men who are feminine. And so they keep their household together by having a masculine wife who has 2 jobs and she pays the bills and she runs the household and she tells them
So
where
she's
to be
the
at
husband.
what time. Right. And I don't agree with it,
Mhm.
but those children are being raised with a nuclear family, what the conservatives want.
Mhm.
So
Go ahead. Talk on the mic.
You were just saying that assigning different gender roles and they're more fluid depending on where they stand rather than.
yeah, I think if you try to force everyone into the same box, it's never going to work. And that's like, I don't think the liberals are like, trying to force men to be women or like, I don't think liberals are trying to destroy the traditional values.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're just creating a more accepting world.
I don't think that traditional liberals or like people who vote Democrat are, but I think that this like new wave, this new agenda that's going on, specifically probably from the Harris and Biden administration and now being, carried out by Harris, I think it is. That's why you have a lot of Democrats who have been Democrats their whole entire life, and they're literally on air saying that for the first time ever, they are voting Republican this year. I don't feel like some of the things that she's pushing is necessarily like a traditional liberal agenda. I do think that that's what they're trying to do whenever they're putting certain things in our school systems and talking to small babies, 5-year-olds, about things that no 5-year-old should ever have to even worry about. They should be worrying about playing outside with their friends. Look, mommy, look at like, the picture I colored you today, not like, oh, this is what I learned about like, oh, am I a boy or a girl? Like I'm sorry, but I don't believe in like telling small babies those types of things.
Well,
I think that is being pushed specifically by this administration because it was never in place whenever.
Yeah, well, I have a son, and I don't know if anyone else here is a parent,
Mhm.
but I will say in this day and age with social media, with phones, they're going to be exposed. Whether or not you homeschool, like unless you just live in a cabin in the woods. Like my son came to me with those questions, and it didn't come from the school. It came from social media, from his peers, and I've never had an issue discussing it with him. Like I haven't seen any.
Well, and that's great. That is the
Yeah.
point, though.
Yeah.
You're discussing it with him.
Mm.
What we're not having is, it's like bring your trans to work day, and then that person comes in and starts showing how to put a condom on a banana. Like that's not.
What did you say? Like why was he even asking if he was a boy or a girl? Like why?
He's never asked me that.
Well, I'm saying you're probably more of like this, like a traditional liberal versus what this new wave is. That's what I'm getting at. Like what you're describing, like, is more traditional. And what I was describing is this like new crazy wave of people putting on cat masks and want to go piss in a litter box and
I
shit
just
like
haven't
that.
experienced that.
You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Which I don't think
Yeah.
that's
Like, I have,
based off of speaking with you. I don't think that that's what you stand for necessarily. I think that
I
you're.
mean, like we were saying earlier, like it's kind of you like naturally attract an echo chamber. Most of my friends are liberal.
Mhm.
I have transgender friends. I have gay friends. I have all of it, and I've never personally, I've never firsthand, even in liberal circles, seen that. Actually, I feel like that's like a red propaganda talking point.
Well, no, I mean, there's actual videos of like in California of them bringing like trans people to elementary schools and then having them dance. Like, that's not propaganda.
No.
Why is it in the textbooks?
And I'm from Ohio, and my brother and his wife chose to pull their daughter. They never even put her into the school system because it was literally on the it's in their school or in their curriculum, even starting at preschool level, that they're going to be talking about things like that. And they're like, there's no way in how I'm going to put my daughter in a school.
Why do they need to discuss that?
I know they're
Yeah.
paying like a significant amount of money to send her to some like little private preschool, and it goes all the way up to I think like high school, and then from there they're going to homeschool her because They don't want her little mind to be around certain things like
always
that. And I'm
getting
from Ohio. I'm from like, we had bring your tractor to school day on prom week. I'm from like the fucking boonies, and they're doing that stuff out there. So it does exist.
Yeah, but I mean, well, trans people do exist.
That does,
Of course.
Gay
But-
people
No,
exist.
the issue is not.
Are they
The issue
not
is
that they don't
Time out, time out.
exist.
We are like Rollo and I on the show. We're pretty libertarian when it comes to this. The issue is not trans people. It has never been
Wait, what is
trans people. Hold on. The issue is not trans people. It has never been trans people. The issue is, as a parent, I should have the right, whether or not my child is, number one, exposed to this form of sexuality and alternative sexuality before they go through puberty, and number two, given affirmative care, or what's it called? Gosh, I'm sorry, gender affirming care. What gender?
Yeah.
Somebody help me out
Gender
here.
affirming.
Gender affirming care. And also with certain people in the Democrat Party denying parental consent, meaning that if my child says it was a boy, wants to be a girl, that me as the parent might not even be notified of that happening. That's what we have a problem with. There is no problem with people being trans. And there's certainly no problem with people being trans after the age of 18, just like when they could vote, smoke cigarettes, or join the military. The problem is when this is the main issue. This is not a moral concern. This is just something all the men who are watching here, if you agree with me, put a 1 in the chat if you agree with it.
Mhm.
Part of our maleness is our heterosexuality. Part of our maleness, if that makes any sense to you.
What about gay men?
No, still, there's that could be part
That's
of
a
their.
mental illness.
No. Okay, I don't know. We're not going to get into that right now. But part of when I went through puberty, part of my masculinity and my maleness was my desire for the opposite sex. And maybe if you're
It's a chemical imbalance.
Jolie, give me a second here. Give me a second. Part of my maleness is my heterosexuality. And let's just say if someone's homosexual and they go through puberty, and after they go through puberty, they decide to become homosexual, or they don't decide, but they become homosexual, then part of their maleness is their homosexuality. That's fine too. But my point is, before puberty, I knew I kind of liked girls. After puberty, I really knew I liked girls. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I do, but I don't think that's defined by maleness, because there are gay men and there are lesbian women.
For sure. So we're just talking about my maleness right now.
Okay.
Those points are valid points. We're just talking about my maleness.
Mm-hmm.
My heterosexuality is not a social construct that was taught to me, and it can't be untaught to me.
So that's how I feel. So that's where when they say like they're teaching the kids to be gay.
No, I don't agree that they're teaching the kids. I don't agree that they're teaching the kids to be gay. What they're doing is proposing ideas, gay and trans. So one of the things that we do that's so destructive in this conversation is we try to conflate gay and trans. Those are two different things.
Yeah.
Gay men, like Buttigieg, gay men are lawyers, doctors, accountants. Gay men really don't have it that rough in this country. Trans men, that's something completely different. You can choose to be trans. You can't choose whether or not to be gay.
I disagree.
You absolutely can choose to be trans. You can choose to identify as a woman and still not be trans. Of course you can. What are you talking about? In order to be trans, you have to make a decision.
In life,
No.
but
You can feel like you're a woman inside. That doesn't make you trans. You have to make a decision to become trans. Do you understand?
I think we all choose our gender every day. I mean,
I think we were born a specific gender.
Okay. I think
that's sex.
Okay,
Yeah.
you
You're born as sex.
obviously don't mean biological gender. You mean like
Well, that's sex.
you're talking about a construct,
Yeah.
social
construct.
So that's when we're talking
But
about
I
when
mean,
you
I wake up every day and I choose to be feminine.
But can you define?
No,
like
you choose to be
XY,
female.
XX?
You don't choose to be feminine.
So I'm gonna let me see if I can clarify this from, because this is a really big really big issue. I've talked about this a million times. Actually, I've written quite a bit about this. Is that there's especially in sort of liberal think tanks, as far as the ideology is concerned, or the thinking is concerned, is it's very rooted in what's known as the blank slate mentality, meaning that everybody can be whatever. Everything is subjective. Everything is relative. We can be whatever. Tomorrow I can go and identify as, a cat, right? Whatever it is. And the thing about that is that's okay. If that's the role playing that you want to play that particular morning, more power to you. Go have a fun time with that. The problem is when you go and you take that and you start to conflate sex and you conflate gender. The problem with those is that for the longest time, really since intersectional feminism came up in the mid 70s, we've had this dependency on this idea that there is a separation between biological sex and gender. And we have in that time have categorically disproven that with the 4 laws of genetic behaviorism. Okay, so behavioral genetics, and a lot of people are still late to the party because they're still clinging on to these old social dynamics and these old kind of ways about their 20th century ways of thinking. The reason, I'll just give you the short version. The short version is this, is that gender is downstream from biological sex. So the things that make you feel like you're feminine, feel like you're masculine, are derived from testosterone, derived from estrogen, derived from your brain structure. Men and women's brain architecture is fundamentally different. And now we know that, but we didn't know that in the mid 70s when we were trying to figure out whether or not you're a boy or you're a girl or whatever. Is this a social constructionism? If you kick out the legs of emotionalism, social constructionism, the blank slate, and emotionalism, every other issue that is either a conservative issue or a liberal issue, all of it collapses. So if you take away those elements, you can start like actually having a more objective understanding of reality.
Eden, here's my only question, right? So the Democrat Party was, especially in the 1960s, was supposed to be the party of the downtrodden and the disenfranchised, and it was supposed to be a party of equality. If I'm a child and I do not have all the information because I'm a child, it's not fair that I'm even allowed to change my gender before I even know what to do. Do you understand what I'm saying? Because here's the reason why. Because me as a man, I didn't change my gender, but I got to choose what I wanted to be after the age of 18. And I wasn't put up, there was no, what I'm saying is when I chose to join the military, I could do so after 18. When I chose to vote, I could do so after 18. Choose to drink alcohol, I could do so after 21. If you're saying that, and by the way, there's another study that shows about 88% of children who have a feeling of gender dysphoria, they revert back to their original gender at some point later. Imagine during that time period, there's surgery that happens and it's irreversible. The point is, one of the reasons why doctors are saying that they're trying to get children this gender affirming care before puberty is because if you change a man into a woman before male puberty, the surgery takes better. That's not a good enough reason for me. That's not a good enough reason for me. If you want to change your gender, do so. Absolutely. After you're 18. If you want to say that you're a woman, that's fine. But the puberty blockers and not telling parents about puberty blockers, I'm sorry, that is a federal felony as far as I'm concerned. That is the idea that someone could take your child and say, hey, we're going to give them this medication and not tell you because you're parental consent. That you can't possibly in a liberal democracy think that is okay. And that's exactly what happened to Elon Musk, which is why he's a Republican now, because in California, they took his son, and they gave him puberty blockers without explaining to him what was going on. That's why he's on this tirade. By the way, that's why he's supporting Donald Trump right now, is because that happened. You can't possibly believe in a liberal democracy that it's okay to take that parental investment, that parental right away from parents. That's the only issue that I'm saying. And you have the decision. You want to color your hair. You don't, like, little girls can't come in there and just say, I want to color my hair blonde if their parents don't want them to. We have guardianship for a reason in this country. But for some reason, in this one area of changing your gender, we want to pull away guardianship from parents. That seems morally reprehensible to me.